Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. This is Vale, aka I Hate Vale, and I'm so grateful that you guys have come back for another video. I'm so grateful to everyone who gave my Catholic core video so much love. It's really more than I even expected. I didn't even think it was going to do as well as it ended up doing. So thank you so much for everybody who watched it, for everybody who liked it, commented, and especially to those who decided to stick along for the ride and subscribed. So thank you. I want to thank you guys so much for your patience. It's been a long journey to get this video out. I just had a bit of writer's block, but whatever the case, I'm making it now. It's here, and I hope you guys stick along for the whole video and, for whatever else might come in along the way. Anyways, let's get started on the topic of today's video, which is the whitewashing of cowboys and country music. So I went on vacation with my family in December to Nashville, and as we all know, Nashville is like the home of country music, all the sorts. When you walk around, everything there is country music this, country music that. My uncle happens to work for a radio station back in Mexico, and he had suggested that I make a video kind of highlighting why it is that a genre that typically catered to black people before now caters only to white people. When we would go into like all the little country bars and stuff, it was nothing but white people, and he was just wondering why that was. So it took me a long time, but I researched it and here we are. So in 2016, the 50th annual Country Music Awards had a set list filled to the brim with country music's most iconic artists. Let's set the scene. However, none was as noteworthy in the media's eyes as renowned pop star Beyoncé.
Guess who's jealous of Adele? Beyoncé.
And her special guest, the Chicks, also known as the Dixie Chicks. Their performance had been kept a secret, but the news spread since there were a bunch of pictures on the internet of them at the venue. Once these photos reached social media, though, the public began responding in a drastically different way than people expected to. A loud portion of those comments, those tweets, were basically just saying that Beyoncé shouldn't be there. Subsequently, all videos and photos of Beyoncé's performance were removed from the internet by the Country Music Association. Now, years later, in 2024, Beyoncé announced that she would be releasing a country album titled Cowboy Carter. The cover featured her on a horse holding an American flag and decked out in red, white, and blue rodeo gear. Once again, the conversation sparked on if Beyoncé could be considered a country artist. Obviously, the question stems further than just Beyoncé. It extends to black people as a whole. Should they be considered country music? Should they be allowed in that sphere? Well, people of color, especially black people, have been present in not only country music, but everything Western, everything cowboy related since the late 19th century. Despite all this, all common imagery that we today know of country music, cowboys, and Western themes only include white people. So why is that? Roger Hardaway's 2001 article highlighted the often ignored history of African American cowboys on the Western frontier. In his work, Hardaway acknowledges how many of the thousands of cowboys who moved west from the 1870s to 1880s were recently emancipated slaves seeking employment in the rapidly growing cattle industry. In the American West, African American men could avoid a lot of the prejudice that they would have faced sharecropping in the South. University of Oregon history professor Kenneth Wiggins Porter argued that by the late 19th century, around 25% of cowboys working in the Western cattle industry were black. Porter further argues that black cowboys had more freedoms than anywhere else in America, stating that the skilled and handy Negro probably had a more enjoyable, if a rougher, existence as a cowhand than he would have had as a sharecropper or laborer in the South. That's not to say there wasn't a level of separation. Black cowboys would have to use separate amenities and would oftentimes receive less promotions in comparison to their white counterparts. Hardaway sheds light on several black cowboys who accomplished great things but were never spoken of. Bill Pickett, for example, performed in rodeos and Wild West shows, and even created his own type of rodeo show called bulldogging, though the practice was later outlawed. Despite all the outstanding black men in the Western sphere, most of them were ignored by the general public. Hardaway cites a 1955 article that argued that most publishers didn't write about black cowboys to appease the readers of westerns who were predominantly white. He further states, all of this served to convince white consumers of mass market media that there were no blacks involved in the frontier cattle industry in the American West. Historian Marshall Fishwick delves into why the cowboy became an American myth, with his argument aligning much with Hardaway's. Western literature writers only wrote what would sell. Fishwick, unlike other historians, acknowledges that most early cowboys were Mexican. Most cowboy terminology, techniques, and equipment had Mexican origins. But Anglos deemed Mexicans untrustworthy, so they never got their credit. What white Americans saw in the cowboy were fictional ideals, representing freedom and bravery. This translated into the image of a hero who is tall, tanned, sinewy, a man who is quite at home in the outdoors. He is easily recognized by his felt hat, flannel shirt, leather-lined trousers, holstered gun, and boots with spurs attached. Above all, the cowboy is always white. When asked about the popularity of a Western story that includes a white cowboy who hunts Mexicans, an editor anonymously replied, "It is understood by us and should be understood by everyone that we are dealing with the popularity of Western stories as concerns readers who are white. The white race has always been noted for being hard drinking, hard fighting, fearless, fair and square. The heroes of Western stories have these characteristics." Fishwick concludes that despite the fact that cowboys were a lot more diverse than they were made out to be, fiction was powerful in establishing an American hero that accurately reflected their culture. At the root of all music, there are instruments. The most prominent instrument in country music is the banjo. That is a descendant of a West African instrument called the akanting, spelled up here because I don't think I pronounced that right. When enslaved people were taken from Africa to the Americas, they did whatever they could to hold on to their culture, including bringing their music and their hymns with them. By the 1840s, the banjo was an exclusively black instrument. The banjo was introduced to white audiences in the 1850s through racist minstrel shows where white people in blackface would depict harmful stereotypes of black people to mock them. However, the usage of the banjo was quickly appropriated by white people and was later adopted in the predominantly white genre of hillbilly music.
Oh, my fat baby loves to eat. A big old Buddha belly and a breast swing past her feet.
During the transition from hillbilly music to the more commercialized country music, any sign of black influence was completely erased for marketing purposes. With the pairing of country music and westerns used to depict the American South, white audiences claimed both as their own and spread this belief around America. The journey of bringing black country artists back to the forefront of this genre has been a long and grueling one, but here are some notable contributions. There are 3 black artists in the Country Music Hall of Fame, so let's do a speed run of those first. Stafford Bailey was a self-taught harmonica player who was invited to perform on the WSM Barnes show, now known as the Grand Ole Opry. The Grand Ole Opry is the oldest, largest live country music radio show, originating from Nashville, Tennessee in 1925. Membership in the Opry remains one of the greatest achievements in the country music sphere. His successful performance made him a regular from the 1930s to the 40s, performing in the Grand Ole Opry tours and commercial songs. Unfortunately, he faced lots of prejudice while working with them, including only being paid $5 for his shows instead of a percentage like his white counterparts, and even having to sneak into the hotels pretending to be a staff just to be allowed to stay there. He was then fired from Grand Ole Opry in 1941 for performing songs that they were actively boycotting since they were his most famous songs. He did a brief return years later where he was heralded as a trailblazer for black performers.
One of the few real Grand Ole Opry pioneers. The fact is, this man was on the Grand Ole Opry the night it got its name. Well, on that particular night, George D. Hay, the solemn old judge, introduced our next guest, D. Ford Bailey, with his harmonica, to play Pan American Blues. He still lives right here in Nashville. Let's welcome him right now. Here's D. Ford Bailey with the Fox Jays.
He passed away in 1982 and was posthumously inducted in the Country Hall of Fame in 2005. Charley Pride was the second black artist to perform on the Grand Ole Opry. In 1966, he signed to RCA Records, and his third single, Just Between You and Me, reached number 9 on the country music charts and even earned him a Grammy. It is notable to mention that his company did not use his pictures when promoting his music.
It also brought us this next young man, and everything that he's recorded's been in the top 10. I don't know about that, but let's welcome him anyway. Here's Country Charley Pride.
In the year 2000, he was the first black person in the Country Music Hall of Fame. Ray Charles was blind by the age of 6, but this did not stop his love for music. He initially gained success performing soul music, a combination of R&B and jazz. By the 1960s, he began exploring other genres and delved into making country music. He recorded several country albums that mainly included covers of other country songs, and his 1960s hit, Georgia on My Mind, was the first of his 3 career number 1 hits on the Billboard Hot 100. In 2022, he was inducted to the Country Music Hall of Fame. Now, the next artist is not a Country Music Hall of Fame inductee, but she is an icon. That is the one, the only, Linda Martell. Martell is a South Carolina native who became the first African American woman to be featured on the Grand Ole Opry. She signed to Mercury Records, who then encouraged her to pursue country music. Her debut album, Color Me Country, was released in 1970, and her hit single, Color Me Father, reached number 22 on the country music charts. She lasted 5 years in the country music genre before leaving, citing racism as one of the main reasons. During her time as a country singer, she was continuously called slurs while performing live and would have her shows canceled once they found out she was black. In recent years, however, her name has resurfaced since the release of Cowboy Carter. With several mentions of her and even a whole song dedicated to her, The Linda Martell Show, Beyoncé highlights one of the most important black women in the country music genre. In an Instagram post after returning to Nashville for the first time in years, Linda Martell states, "I am proud that Beyoncé is exploring her country music roots. What she is doing is beautiful, and I am honored to be a part of it. It's Beyoncé after all." Beyoncé is in a much better position than Linda Martell was in her time. She is an established artist who's been here for a very long time. That is not to say, though, that it was going to be easy, because it definitely wasn't. Since the announcement of her album, she received tons of hate from the general media. I'd like to point out that this reaction drastically differs from that of Lana Del Rey's, who also recently announced a country album that we're never gonna get. But yet, even though she is not from the South and is a culture vulture to the max, I love you, Lana, but come on, she received no hate. If anything, she got praise for trying to hop on the bandwagon of country aesthetic and make a country album. The obvious difference between the two is their race. Beyoncé is actually from the South, originating from Houston, Texas, and her mother even being from Louisiana, and Lana Del Rey is a white lady from New York who changes her race every album. Since the album's release, however, reactions have been a lot more positive, with Texas Hold'em reaching #1 on the country music charts and her receiving a lot of high praise for her work. It seemingly established the season of the cowgirl, with boots, hats, and buckle bunny accusations as far as the eye can see. So before buying your boots for yet another party with a mechanical bull, remember all of the people of color that came before you. Case closed. Now, I'm personally not that involved with country music as a whole. You know, I'm one of those people who say, I listen to everything except country music. You know, that's me. My country music knowledge really just, like, stems to Before He Cheats by Carrie Underwood. There's not anything deeper, you know. I watched the Hannah Montana movie, you know. So I don't really think there's much more I can contribute other than the facts that I gathered. So if anybody else has anything they would like to contribute, please, I welcome you to have a discussion in the comments. I love reading what you guys have to think and just seeing other opinions that differ a little bit from what I think or what others in the comments think. It is a beautiful, safe space. Discuss, I beg. I'm probably gonna come back sooner than later, I'm hoping. It may not be a video essay, but I'm trying to get more content out aside from just like the history stuff. Also just delve into like what I do, what I wear, stuff like that, you know. So if you'd like to see that, or if you'd like to see something else, also comment that, let me know. I'd appreciate it. But otherwise, that's probably gonna be it from me. But aside from that, I'll see y'all later. Bye. That was my country accent. I'm not from Atlanta, I'm from Georgia. Bye. Oh my god. Okay, that's enough.